All right, so let's talk about that splendid little war. So again, we are trying to give ourselves status as a world power, and we really want to get rid of Spain as a world power. They're not doing great anyways. They would probably be an easy target, much easier than Britain. Britain's still very strong, but Spain's doable. So let's focus on Spain. And a lot of American public opinion is formed by this concept of jingoism, which is a vocabulary word and you should know what it means. It's basically a super extreme form of nationalism where we and the expansionists are demanding that it's our right to take our place as a world leader and like we're the best. And this jingoism and this concept that we are so good and so much better than everybody else and that it's our right to take over is going to lead to demand for war with Spain, not only from the people who get to declare war, but sometimes from just the American public. And why do we care about Spain? Well, Spain has control of most of the Caribbean islands. And so, as Spain starts to lose their status as a world power, the natives on the islands are going to rise up to overthrow their Spanish colonizers. So, Cuba is going to revolt in 1868, and they're going to fight Spain for about 10 years. Spain is controlling the Philippines, they're controlling Guam, they're controlling Puerto Rico. Those things are useful to us if we can get something going against Spain. And since we're seeing revolt, maybe we can work out a deal, especially Cuba, because Cuba's only 90 miles off the coast of Florida. So the Cubans revolt against Spain from 1868 to 1878. And then in 1895, the Cuban nationalists renew their struggle against Spain. And they start to turn to the U.S. looking for an allyship. And they're not just going to straight out ask for an allyship. They're going to sabotage and attack the Cuban plantations that the Spanish own, hoping to drive the Spanish out and convince the U.S. that that's a good enough reason to ally with them, because if we can ally with them, then Spain will go away and we can have a deal with Cuba and Cuba will be free. Now, Spain's not ready to just leave, so Spain sends their general Valeriano Weyler and 100,000 troops over to crush this revolt in Cuba, and he does what most losing world power leaders do at the time. He builds camps and forces civilians into camps where he starves them. And about 10, I don't even know our number here, tens of thousands of Cubans are going to die of starvation and disease in this camp, which is going to get the US press to lean on that. And they're going to call him the Butcher. And the yellow press, as we call it, which is the US press corps, sensationalizing news stories, is really going to drive this war cry forward. And yellow press has not gone away. We see yellow press every day today. All of these sensational news stories you get, clickbait, whatever you want to call it, that is yellow press. It is this concept that you feature this bold headline of crime, disaster, scandal, and the story itself might not really be that, but you've spun it so that people are going to read it and they're going to be worked up about it. So yellow press is not gone. It's just switched platforms. It's not in the newspaper anymore. It's on your phones now, but it's still there, which is really important because the job of yellow press, the job of yellow journalism, is to get you to feel extreme emotions about something. So you need to be aware of when the press is trying to sway you in a certain way. And two of the biggest newspapers of the time, the New York World and the New York Journal, which are owned by Joseph Pulitzer and William Randolph Hearst, are the most famous yellow press newspapers at the time. They are constantly printing exaggerated or outright false accounts of what Spain is doing in Cuba. They are pushing for the American people to get Congress to intervene for humanitarian reasons. They want war because war is a good story. And along with all this, we get a little bit of extra outrage in 1898 when we get the Delome letter, which is printed in the journal by William Randolph Hearst, probably not by him specifically, but the Delome letter is a letter from the Spanish diplomat where he is criticizing President McKinley. So, what better way to get people fired up and call for war than to print a character attack of your president by the Spanish? So, we've got all of these factors that are going to push the US to cry for war. And then our final catalyst here. On February 15th, 1898, less than a week after that letter is leaked, the USS Maine explodes and is sunk in Havana Harbor. Now, the ship is anchored in Havana Harbor. It's our ship, and it explodes, and it kills 260 Americans. The yellow press instantly accuses Spain of deliberately blowing up the ship. That is their thing, and they're going to use this as their rallying cry. Remember the Maine, how dare the Spanish blow us up? But in reality, the ship most likely blew up due to an accident. It was an accident. It was not purposeful by the Spanish. And in fact, to this day, we're pretty sure that it was caused by an American. But the yellow press doesn't fit well with their narrative. You can't tell the American people blew up their own ship because they're dummies. So we are going to remember the Maine. And that is going to cause President McKinley to issue an ultimatum to Spain, where he's going to tell Spain that you need to agree to a ceasefire in Cuba or we are going to war with you. And so Spain agrees. Spain says, fine, we'll stop fighting in Cuba. That's not what the US press wants to hear. And so the US newspapers keep pushing the US people to be angry about Spain. And they keep pushing for them to tell their Congress people that they're angry about Spain and we need to go to war, we need to go to war. And so even after all that, President McKinley eventually gives into the pressure and calls for war in April of 1898, stating 4 reasons. 1, he says we need to put an end to the barbarities, bloodshed, starvation, and horrible miseries in Cuba. 2, we need to protect the lives and property of U.S. citizens living in Cuba. 3, we need to end the very serious injury to the commerce, trade, and business of our people. And 4, we need to end the constant menace to our peace arising from disorder in Cuba. You'll notice none of those have anything to do with the people of Cuba, right? We're horrified at Spain committing these atrocities against the Cuban, but McKinley's 4 reasons are all about us, not about the Cubans. And so on April 20th, 1898, in response to McKinley's message about war, Congress passes the Teller Amendment, which is a joint resolution that authorizes the U.S. to go to war against Spain in Cuba. And the Teller Amendment tells us and the people of Cuba that the U.S. has no intention of taking control of Cuba, and that once peace is restored, the Cuban people would be able to control their own government, which sounds like such a nice little way to get the Cubans to agree to work with us. And it is for the moment. But if you know anything about the US, you should probably already know how that's going to go.